Everyone has a plan until a hydrogen bomb explodes in their face. A very good morning to you. You're welcome along to OTB AM this Thursday morning. The All-Stars are out, but more importantly than that, we're on to round 6 of Tony McGregor versus Eoin Sheehan. And Owen's not very happy about it. I've got to say, Tony McGregor has upped the hype game and I'd say has taken a lead at the moment.
Well, you know, saying that a hydrogen bomb would go off in my face is really disrespectful and quite hurtful, to be quite honest with you. So, not a great morning, to be honest with you. But, you know, such is the fight game, and I'm in the fight game now.
Where did he say it?
He said it in the Sun this morning.
All right, and how did it reach the Sun? How did they get wind of it?
I don't know.
What do you think's going on?
I think there's a rat.
Where's the rat?
I think the rat is somewhere in the office.
And what's that rat doing?
I think he's leaking information for...
He or she, could be she.
He or she for their own self-gain. Let's not forget, we need to get back to basics here. This is about the bile and hatred between two grown men. This is nothing to do with promotion. This is nothing to do with the fight game. This is pure hate.
He will be eating his Xmas turkey through a straw. This is page 23 of the Irish Sun today, so we'll be talking about that a little bit later on in our pay-per-view. The big story of the day, though, is that Stephen Cluxton has once again been snubbed by that small, select group of people, the elite of the Irish Gaelic football writers' coterie and broadcasters. And Rory Beggan has been named the All-Star goalkeeper. That is the big story this morning. It is a scandal. It's an outrage. It's 5 years since he was an All-Star.
Yeah.
I just need to check that. Darren told me that.
No, it
earlier.
is. It's 2013. That's
it
also
might just have been a bit of hype.
That's also the last time an All-Ireland winning goalkeeper won the All-Star for goalkeeper.
Oh, so they just don't like the dubs, is that it? I mean, there were 7 dubs given All-Stars, so... I mean, you could have given 13 of them, though, couldn't you? The greatest team of all time, with the easiest All-Ireland victory that they've ever had, so therefore you must say they're playing at their highest level.
Well, like, just to say, it's not just the dubs. I mean, the year after 2013, Dublin didn't win the All-Ireland. Kerry won the All-Ireland, but they didn't get the All-Star for the goalkeeper. Paddy Durkin got All-Star goalkeeper in 2014, despite the fact that he made that big mistake in the All-Ireland final, which shows that really, when it comes to maybe a selection of errors throughout your season, you're not really judging that too much. It's kind of on the standout moments. But what it says to me mostly is that it's still goalkeeping, the basics of being a shot stopper, despite the modern influence of goalkeepers as an attacking force and as an attack starter. It is still down to the basics. So you win an All-Ireland when you don't concede too many goals, when you don't give up too many goal chances. And that's what this Dublin defence have done over the last 4 or 5 years. And Stephen Cluxton just basically hasn't had to utilise his shot-stopping array of talents as much as some other goalkeepers, and it's as simple as that.
Except his kickouts have completely changed and revolutionised the game of Gaelic football, and so he has become like one of the most important players on his team.
And you take that into account, and the most outrageous kick-out taker this year, and certainly free taker from goals, has been Rory Beggan. So there is an irony and there's a contradiction in what I say to a certain extent, but like the last 2 years, David Clarke got it on shot-stopping. This year, Rory Beggan got it because of just his unbelievable range of passing off the tee. I think
he got it for that one kick out that went the length of the field against Kerry. I think everybody's like,
kicked 18
that's
points
it.
this season.
He's the All-Star goalkeeper. That's it. It's over now. He
kicked 18 points.
The length of the field. I've never seen that before. Give that man the All-Star. I'm not hearing any arguments. I don't care that Stephen Cluxton has changed the game. 18 points is great, but like they're frees. He's not dribbling the ball up and taking long-range shots and sticking it over, is he? I mean, let's talk about that.
He's obviously not, but...
And what happens when he does dribble forward and hoof the ball unmightily forward in the last minute of a game when you're desperately looking for a shot?
Well, he gets his team knocked out of the championship.
So no one cares about that. And last year, like at the last moment of the championship, the Mayo goalkeeper kicks the ball out over the touchline. We're like, just don't kick the ball out of the touchline. Kick it in the direction of one of your players who's being attacked, and you're going to get a free, and the referee's going to have to play on. No, I'm going to kick it out over the sideline.
Well, that's what I mean. Durkin in 2014 handed Kerry an All-Ireland, and he won the All-Star for goalkeeper of the year as well.
So just going back here, when was the last year you said an All-Ireland winning goalkeeper?
Well, it was Cluxton in 2013 was the last time an All-Ireland.
Cluxton wins in 2013. 2014 it's Paul Durkin. 2015 it's Brendan Keeley. What did he do in 2015 that was...
He was brilliant in the Munster final, I remember. But he was like consistently excellent all year. He didn't do anything stupid.
Did Cluxton have a bad year in 2015 or something? Did he make a couple of mistakes? Was that the year that...
Well, they got caught in the hop by Donegal. I think it was one opportunity that we got to, give All-Stars to somebody else for 1 year.
Yeah, okay. 2016, David Clarke.
Clarke did back-to-back then.
2017, David Clarke.
And then Rory Beggan. But Beggan was the outstanding goalkeeper in the country this year. And it might be because Monaghan are weaker defensively than Dublin that he got to show his talents. And also the fact that maybe when you look at their full back line, when you look at their half back line, their movement perhaps isn't as excellent as Dublin's. They're just not as uniform. They're not as kind of mind-boggling to play against as Dublin. And quite often, this is just a theory, but quite often it seems that Stephen Cluxton, when it comes to his kickouts, we've just got used to them looking so simple at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that's... it'd be good to have an ex-manager in the room. I mean, obviously you can't, because that manager would have managed some county, and so therefore everybody would assume a bias on his part, who goes, it's really hard to get a goalkeeper to hit this small window that somebody's running into at pace. It's almost impossible. I would argue that last season, Cluxton's kick-out against Tyrone, the first one of the game, was the end of the match last year in 2017, and that he deserved the All-Star for that kick-out alone. I know you're obviously not going to give it on one instance, and it's over the whole course of the year, but anyway, we'll come back to this a little bit later on, because obviously Darren has some thoughts and theories on why Stephen Cluxton has been snubbed by the All-Star selectors one more time. Conor McKeon is going to join us a little bit later on as well, around about 8 o'clock, to talk through that and the rest of the All-Star decisions. Ross Tucker's going to join us around about 10 to 9. This is on the back of Martin Ziegler's story yesterday that parents and teachers are injecting their children and their students in South African rugby to try and get them professional contracts. This is a country that we continue to have very strong links to. Teenagers arriving from South Africa, players getting second chances, having failed drugs test there in the Irish rugby system. So it's obviously something that we're particularly interested in to see, are we putting our own checks and balances in place enough? Are we aware of what's going on in South African rugby? And is World Rugby really doing enough to try and stop this? Are the South African Rugby Football Union doing anything to counterbalance the stories that we're seeing? We'll talk about that. We'll bring you to the sports pages, and we'll do our breakfast menu as well as our sports news with Darren around about 8:35. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
There's the headline on the back of the Irish Independent today. Snubbed Cluxton is a victim of his own success. This is Tomás O'Shea talking to Donncha Boyle. Basically, it's the wrong decision, says Tomás. You'll have arguments about what Beggan did, and don't get me wrong, he was outstanding. It's not about that he has more than 200 appearances for Dublin, or he's lifted the cup 5 times as captain, which is phenomenal. It's about the greatest football team arguably we've ever seen, and this fella is the heartbeat of it every single game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to go down as one of the biggest anomalies in All-Star history, probably the biggest anomaly in All-Star history, that he managed to go from 2014...
Brian Whelan was hurler of the year and didn't get an All-Star.
Okay, what?
Yeah.
So what year was that, 90...
I want to say...
7? 98.
It was one of those 2 years that awfully won the
94,
award in the 90s, yeah, so they had to change the whole voting system after that.
That is bizarre, I forgot about that.
Sure, I'd say everybody's voting for Whelan, aren't they? They must be. I'm going to give, I don't know, I can't remember who, I can't remember who beat him, but it was like what?
Okay, so the biggest footballing anomaly in All-Stars history is Stephen Cluxton not getting anything between 2014 and 2018, because arguably his distribution has got better in that window.
Yeah.
It's not like at the peak of his physical powers, or the peak of any ordinary human being's physical powers, meant peak Cluxton is actually, as he got older and wiser, his just amount of information and his amount of experience just added to a higher level, and he hasn't picked up a single one. And to be fair, I think it is justifiable when you look at some of the performances David Clarke put in over the last couple of years to say, yeah.
Two.
Yeah, on an individual case-by-case basis, I think there is exceptions to be made every single year, but as a holistic thing.
I don't think so. I actually don't. I think that it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how important the role of the goalkeeper is and how it's changed, and how it's the point you're making. Everybody takes it for granted at this point. Everybody takes for granted that he is going to be able to hit his midfielders in stride. It's impossible. Most counties are desperately trying to find a forward or a midfielder who can kick the ball that they can convert into a goalkeeper at underage level because of what Cluxton has done. There's been few enough innovations in Gaelic football that are positive, but turning the goalkeeper into this quarterback has been this stroke of genius. And it's being completely like, well, screw you, Dublin. You've got all the best players and all the money, and look at all the stuff you have. You can't have the best goalkeeper too.
Unless they pick...
This guy saved some shots.
Well, come on, Beggan's distribution is unbelievable. Unless...
Sorry, David Clark. I mean, David Clark's a really good goalkeeper, but like he's not in the class of Cluxton.
No, but that's what I mean. As a holistic thing, it's weird. But
stick Cluxton in the Mayo team. How many All-Irelands do they have at this point?
Like I'm just trying to...
Two or three.
Like you can make that case for pretty much any position or any award down through the years.
I can't.
But like, okay, so give me a footballer of the year.
Bernard Brogan.
Okay, so would you say that Michael Darragh-Macaulay's in the same class as Bernard Brogan when you look back in the Dublin teams? No, but was Michael Darragh-Macaulay at a higher class than every other Dublin 2013? Yes, he was. So like breaking it down into individual years, you can definitely make more of a sense of what things are. You can't just say, oh well, there's a black mark against him because of that prolonged period where he didn't get an All-Star. But I do agree. Like when we look back at his career, he should probably. You would think that he deserves more.
He's the greatest goalkeeper in the history of the game who's playing at his absolute peak and he hasn't been an All-Star for 5 seasons. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous.
I wonder, do they pick the team from front to back and they get to the midfield and they're like, well, Brian Howard, Brian Fenton, McCarthy's in there, Kilkenny's in there, and it's like, look at all those All-Stars who can catch high balls.
That's enough.
Look at all those brilliant receivers.
Oh.
You don't need a good goalkeeper to kick the ball to them.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. It's a fair cop gov. The other picture on the back of the Irish Independent. We'll come back to Cluxton, but give us your thoughts on them when we put those comments to Darren a little bit later on, and we'll also talk about them when we are coming back to the All-Stars generally a little bit later on. So there's a picture of a guy in a scream mask, which, I mean, let's face it, if you're of a certain age, is terrifying.
It's Martin O'Neill.
Who has invaded the pitch, and Declan Rice throws the ball at him. So, not a good sign if it is Martin O'Neill that Declan Rice throwing the ball at him. I think he misses him, though.
By the looks of that picture, I think he does.
Yeah, not great. Come on, Declan. I mean, if you were Irish, you would have hit him. But anyway, the FA are not expecting clarity on Declan Rice's international future ahead of O'Neill's November squad announcement next Tuesday. It'll be another squad announcement hijacked by Declan Rice. It'll leak out an hour before the squad announcement. O'Neill, come on, Jesus Christ. You just give me one squad announcement where you're not like completely overshadowing this. No is the answer. And then Carberry in pole position to start against the Italians. Cian Tracy out in Chicago has the information that it looks like Carberry's going to start. It looks like McGrath's going to be 9. So the old Leinster half-back pairing.
It looks like Larmour's going to be at full-back as well. It's going to be... it's just an exciting team. Obviously, when you're playing against Italy's B team, it's hard to get too excited, but the Ireland team itself is enough excitement. Life after Joe, we've been talking about this. Ronan O'Gara sees nobody out there like Schmidt, which is like... which is interesting because last week the IRFU were like, oh, we'll be grand, we can totally survive if Joe Schmidt decides to move on after being here in Ireland. We're grand. It's not one man, it's the system that's in place now that has created all this success. And well, they have to say that. I mean, obviously they have to say it, but Ronan O'Gara's like, no. No. Joe Schmidt, he the man. He absolutely the man. So, and I can see why he would say that. Well, Ronan O'Gara doesn't work for the IRFU. If you worked for the IRFU, you'd probably say we'd be grand because it does diminish your own organisation saying that it's a one-man body. Well, he's not saying that. He's saying there's nobody out there like him. Like we've done, everybody else is great and so on, but there is nobody. I'm going to find the exact quote now. So I don't think there's another Joe out there, which is fair enough. It's like, and that's why you've got to do absolutely everything you possibly can to keep him. So. Great piece in the back, like really brilliant piece by Jack Anderson today in the back of the Irish Examiner sports section. So this is the Australian cricket captain who was banned for a year and had to resign after the ball tampering scandal came out. And there's a long piece about how they dealt with the ball tampering scandal in Australian cricket and how ultimately the players ended up carrying the can for the culture of Australian cricket, which seems pretty grotesque. It's a complete win at all costs culture where I think it was the former chief executive told the players, you're not paid to play, you're paid to win. So the only conclusion from that is, I have to win here. I'm not here to uphold the values of the game or spread the gospel of cricket right around the world and around the country. I'm not here to represent my country. I'm here to win the game, and that will result in me doing whatever it takes to win because they're the rules of the game, right? That's exactly how certain sports teams around the world understand the rules of engagement are. This is a professional sports franchise.
our job is to win. I'm thinking of New Zealand. They're absolutely cynical in rugby in every single potential way that it is required to win, as well as being the highest level of proficiency of skill. But he goes on to talk about the GAA and to link these two things. Also links in WADA and how corrupted WADA has come by the conflict of interest of having the chief of WADA be also part of the International Olympic Committee, because the International Olympic Committee is selling the dream of the Olympics, and that involves having the fastest runner, the highest jumpers, higher, stronger, the fastest, the strongest.
The host city, the host country having a phenomenal Winter Games.
Exactly. And WADA can't be honest bystanders watching that if they're involved in the promotion of the games. So. And then he goes on to talk about, well, hang on a second, what about the GAA? And a couple of interviews at the weekend, John Horan and also Tom Ryan. And he goes on to talk about how Tom Ryan was at the weekend still talking about Liam Miller and the opening of Páirc Uí Chaoimh and how a lot of unfairness was thrown at the GAA, instead of talking about the violence on the field, which is at the moment right across the country. Like right across the country. Instead of addressing that issue and saying, okay, we're on top of that and we're going to stand that out, it was like, well, I think we were not really given a fair crack of the whip on the Liam Miller thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I would totally agree on the GAA point. The idea that a nation would say to its professional sports people that you're here to win rather than here to represent your country, are they definitely mutually exclusive?
No. There's like
the idea that you're there to represent your country, and if you represent your country in a successful manner, which is a win at all costs culture, then there's nothing too unusual about that. It doesn't necessarily always have to be insidious. It doesn't always have to result in cheating. It can result in bending the rules quite a bit. You mentioned the All Blacks there, getting the rubber the green off referees, but representing your culture, representing your country in a successful manner is never always a bad thing. No.
Okay, so O'Gara warns Murray over All Blacks. This is a fairly straightforward point as well, I think, that we were kind of making during the week. If Murray's going to play against the All Blacks, he needs to play before then. I'd say in his own head, he'd probably like 2 games before he's playing them. He's been out a long time, November 17, isn't it? It's the 1st of November now. He needs to be playing. I can't see how he'll play. I met him at the Munster dinner in London on the 9th of October. I got the impression from him he thought he was days away rather than weeks away. Even if he starts next Monday as a full week, that's still 2 weeks. Well, that's easy to do if he was able to do full contact on Monday. So, needs to play this week, needs to play next week, and needs to get game time so he can actually be fit to play. Rice decides to defect to England. There it is in cold black and white from John Fallon. He's expected to tell Republic of Ireland manager Martin O'Neill during the next month that he has officially defected to England. Yesterday the story was in the Star that it was going to happen. They were kind of saying he's expecting to. They're still saying he's expecting to. So it hasn't happened yet, but it is going to happen, as I guess we always thought it would do from the moment the story emerged. Mullins lauds his special hurdler Lorena. Willie Mullins plans to take aim at giants Sam Crow and Bouvardere in the Unibet champion hurdle with the star mare Lorena. So that'll be a pretty interesting 3-way battle there. Emotional Dettori hails the brilliance of Enable. So John Gostin and Frankie Dettori stand on the cusp of history in the quest for an unprecedented Prix de l'Arc Triumph Breeders' Cup double, but it was the landmark defeats that lingered when they graced Churchill Downs yesterday, so we'll talk about that on Friday Night Racing. Turkish Delight, Kinholt looks a sweet choice to produce a fast start in Turkey, and Roberto Martinez odds have been slashed to land the Real Madrid job. He's as short as 9-4 to be the next manager of Real Madrid. That's amazing. It is amazing. Fair play to him.
Yeah, like,
what a career path.
Here's quite. If the biggest comparison you can make to the decision that Florentino Perez is making right now is, what sort of type of person would you hire to mind your kids? Would you hire a brilliant, suave manager, a management type, an officiator, or would you hire a childminder?
I'd probably hire a childminder.
Roberto Martinez is football's equivalent of a childminder. It's perfect. It's the perfect appointment for Real Madrid.
Expensive for a childminder.
It's an expensive childminder.
Just get a childminder. Darren Sherlock on Twitter says, Roy Beggan has been the best goalkeeper in Ireland this year. His distribution is even better than Cluxton. Obviously, you haven't watched enough to judge.
I agree.
Thanks, Darren. Ian O'Reilly says, get at Dave McIntyre OTB on now to explain this decision. 5 years, my God. I think he's been a selector all of those 5 years. I think it's like he arrived and that was the end of the Cluxton win. Cluxton was an all-star hoover for the first decade of his career, winning 5 All-Stars in the first 10 years, and none since, just as they've started to get good.
That's because he had to make way more saves back then. It's as simple as that. More saves equals more gongs. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is FAI in the dark. Rice says still to outline future to Ireland boss while sun shines. Spurs won in the Carabao Cup last night. Back of the Mirror is heart attack. Hibs boss Lennon hit by coin as thuggish behaviour mars Edinburgh derby. Back page of the Sun then goes with that scream mask scaring Artur Masuaku. Hammer House of Horrors yobs shame at London Stadium. While the back page of the Irish Daily Star goes with the Hibs or the Edinburgh derby again. Shameful. Lennon demands action after he is struck by coin. While a couple of the UK back pages, the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section goes with sun shines for Spurs strikers. 2-goal blast sets up quarter-final with Arsenal and brings smile back for Maurizio Pochettino. And finally, the back page of The Guardian this morning. Spurs shadow Tottenham residents fear for their future, says David Conn. The differences between club and council over regeneration around White Hart Lane leaves the locals in limbo. And you've also got Frank Lampard there. No fairy tale return as Rams' own goals hand Chelsea to win.
Yeah, a great game. 3-2 at half-time, 3-2 at full-time.
Yeah, 2 own goals. 2 fairly identical own goals by Derby County, which is an achievement in itself.
Yeah, our boy
Richard Keogh, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles in the Carabao Cup, isn't it?
Let's talk about the 2018 All-Stars. Magnificent 7 for the best team in the history of Gaelic football, but not the one that I think most fans wanted the most. Certainly most Dublin supporters. Stephen Cluxton did not make the cut. Rory Beggan is the All-Star goalkeeper. Conor McKeon is with us this morning to talk to us about this. Conor, you've obviously been covering this Dublin team for, I don't know, is it maybe a decade and a half at this point? I don't want to prematurely age you a bit there, but he is their most important player over that time, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And what's more is, I know you could make a case for Kieran Kilkenny and Brian Fenton in the 4 in a row, but I still think that Cluxton has been the most influential player on the 4 in a row. None of which of those seasons has ended with him getting an All-Star. Now, to be fair to the All-Star selection committee, they don't take cumulative greatness into these things. It tends to be very specific and the minutiae of who was the best goalkeeper in an individual year. But I still think on that basis that Cluxton had a very, very strong claim this year. And I think he had a very strong claim last year, and I think he had a very strong claim in 2016. So I just think it's odd that, in 3 years when he's gone very, very close to an All-Star, he hasn't got them in any year. And like Rory Beggan's claims are strong, but again, like there's a contrast and compare thing here. Like Beggan played 9 games, whereas Cluxton played 6 and a bit. Beggan was much busier. Like he made more saves, but he also made more mistakes. He had more spectacular kickouts because more teams pressed up on Monaghan's kickout, but he also gave more kickouts away. Like, people talk about his kickout performance against Kerry, but, late on in that game, Kerry pressed up and won 3 kickouts that they turned into scores. And he also had mistakes, like the one he kicked over the end line against Tyrone in the All-Ireland semi-final. The goal against Fermanagh, Owen Donnelly's goal, which knocked Monaghan out of Ulster when he came prematurely for a ball. And another one against Armagh, which ultimately wasn't particularly important or detrimental to Monaghan. Whereas Cluxton, if you're looking for mistakes, really the Damien Comer goal was the only one. But similarly, if you're looking for saves from Cluxton, the penalty save from Brannigan in that game as well was the only save that kind of stands out. So, look, I'd love to know what way it's weighted, mistakes versus how busy you are versus how many games you play. Like on the basis of Cluxton's leadership qualities, the influence he has on other Dublin players, and the standards that Dublin play to are probably set by Stephen Cluxton. But again, like they're very intangible, and I'm not sure that those factors make it into the All-Star selection committee meeting. Yeah,
like it's tough because obviously it's people who are watching a fair bit of Gaelic football, but at the same time, a lot of it seems to be an emotional decision. It's like, yeah, well, as Owen said, he kicked 18 points this year. I mean, so he's taking long-range frees. Fair play, that's great, but that's not actually the reason that he's getting the All-Star, unless that is the reason that he's getting the All-Star, and it doesn't make that much sense.
Yeah, well, again, like the criteria of the All-Stars, particularly the goalkeeper position, that's like last year, for instance, like David Clarke was incredibly busy, but that's because Mayo were beaten in the first round of the championship and they had to scrape by Clare and Derry, and he had to save a couple of penalties. So David Clarke profited from the fact that his team weren't up to much early on in the championship. And similarly, like Clark made a couple of big mistakes with kickouts very late on in the All-Ireland final, whereas I think with Cluxton, where one of the more remarkable things, or one of the many remarkable things about him, is his performances in All-Ireland finals, particularly in the second half of All-Ireland finals. Anytime the pressure has come on Dublin, he has always found his man. Like, he is the definition of clutch. You know, that kick out this year to Jack McCaffrey, that sucked in, I can't remember which Tyrone player, almost made him believe that he was going to get to the ball first, that set up a Dublin score. At a time when they'd gone 7 or 8 minutes without a score, I think that was nearly the highlight of the All-Ireland final, just as individual plays. So there is, I think, also a perception out there that what Cluxton does is easy, that anybody can chip the ball to the corner back, whereas I think there's a bit more to it than that. And the other thing I think he's probably suffered from is the fact that a lot of managers now at this stage, I think, have done the calculations, and that they've kind of figured out that Dublin are going to retain their kick out anyway. So it's far better to give them the kick 90 yards from their goal than it is to let them kick the ball into midfield and be behind the cover. So, and Dublin play in such a system that they will always take the quick, short kick out to the corner back when it's available. So again, like a lot of what Cluxton does, it's very... He makes it look easy. It's not that easy, but I think a lot of the really spectacular long kickouts, like the 2013 All-Ireland final, he had a load of them in that game. It was probably his greatest ever performance. But like a lot of those are kind of redundant now. Dublin aren't forced into a situation where they actually have to go long.
Tommy's making the point to me here that Cluxton hasn't won an All-Star since Dean Rock started kicking the frees. Is that a coincidence?
That's probably a point. Yeah, well, like that would buy into the notion that he hasn't been as busy. Like Cluxton's last All-Star was 2013. Like he won 3 All-Stars before Dublin ever won an All-Ireland, and he won one in 11 and won one in 13. So, like I think, to be fair to the All-Star selection committee, this is really the only controversy in the team, or the only talking point, if you want to put it like that. It's the only really contentious issue. But and to be fair to them, you can only really take this on its merits. It's whether Cluxton or Beggan was the more influential player in 2018. But I suppose, after 2 or 3 of very close goals, you start to wonder whether it becomes a particular issue that people have with Stephen Cluxton, or why is it that in very, very tight situations he's kind of losing these calls.
It's almost as if, in an ironic way, Stephen Cluxton is the Mayo of All-Stars at this point. At what point does Stephen Cluxton himself actually start to get a little bit pissed off? Of course, he'll say himself that he doesn't care. It's all about the All-Irelands and captaining the team to collective glory. But surely there's a little bit of a niggle here that, like, come on, give me a bit of individual recognition.
Oh, well, I know, I'd be fairly certain. Certainly a lot of former Dublin players, and probably a lot of current Dublin players last year would have felt that Cluxton should have got the All-Star. They see what he represents to that team in terms of, the standards that Dublin play to are the standards that Cluxton set. And I think I'd probably maintain that Jim Gavin's greatest ever move when he came into the Dublin job was making Cluxton the captain. Because prior to that, he was, this kind of, individual who had incredibly high standards. And when Gavin came in, he basically said, well, look, he's the captain, so that's everybody's standards. And I think a lot of what has followed for Dublin has come from how good a leader Cluxton has been. But again, I don't know how you break that down into a profit and loss column when you come around to selecting your All-Stars. But it definitely is a little bit odd. The other thing I think probably worked against Cluxton is the other 7 dubs. Like there could be no debate about them. They were all nailed on. And in these sort of situations, I think there is a tendency to make sure that there's a spread. That the All-Ireland champions rarely go over 7 All-Stars. That's just the nature of these things. So I think in any tight call with 7 nailed on players, I think Dublin were going to lose the tight one.
Are there any other dubs you can feel? So we have the picture up there. Johnny Cooper is cornerback, James McCarthy centre-back, Jack McCaffrey alongside him in the half-back line. Brian Howard named at midfield. Ultimately that might be the position that Brian Howard in years to come becomes remembered as one of the great midfielders. Him and Fenton are 8 and 9 in the team. Mannion is 10. Kilkenny is 11. You can pick Mannion anywhere, I guess, and Kilkenny probably could have been picked at 14, whatever. But anyway, so was there any other dubs who can feel a little bit left out today?
I don't think so. I think Niall Scully was probably the closest of the rest, but it was a season when there was a lot more. There were a far greater number of worthy forwards than there were worthy defenders. Like at the back, I think Owen Bon Gallagher is probably the most unlucky not to get in the team. Gavin White had his moments for Kerry as well, but probably not enough of them to be considered an all-star. And up front, I think at various different stages, Shane Walsh and Damien Comer both looked like they might get into the all-star team, but I think Ian Burke was the pick of the Galway forwards, and he was a fairly justifiable selection too. So I can't really see where, in our annual endeavours to generate controversy from the All-Star selection, I think it probably begins and ends with Cluxton. But the Howard thing, I think this is the first year that the selection committee were given kind of a poetic license to select players in positions other than that in which they were nominated. And I think that's probably fair enough, because Brian Howard played in the half-back line in Leinster, he played in the half-forward line in the All-Ireland series, but he played as much in midfield as Brian Fenton did. And similarly, I think a lot of people pick Colm Kavanagh at midfield because he went in for the throw-in, but ostensibly he was throw-in sweeper. He stood on the edge of the square. So I think given that kind of selection fluidity, I think you have a better balanced team, and I think this is a pretty good one, albeit you could make the case for Stephen Cluxton or Rory Beggan.
Yeah, the point about the sweeper is interesting because it's kind of finally catching up with the modernity of the game. In previous years, there might not have been any room for a sweeper, or the role might not have been as well understood, its value and its importance. But so, for example, if they decided that they wanted to get Fenton in the team and they couldn't fit him as a forward and they couldn't fit him as a defender, that might have been the end of Colm Kavanagh. But actually being able to go, well, we're picking Colm Kavanagh at 3, tough luck lads, that's the way it goes. That's a welcome development.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the first genuine All-Star team where you have 12 defenders in the team, 2 zonal sweepers and 2 markers and 3 runners from deep, because that's the way teams set up nowadays. It's like Paul Mannion being selected in the half-forward line. The reason is he was an inside forward, but he did a huge amount of backtracking. So I suppose, we all like looking at the All-Stars team and it's kind of 6 backs and 6 forwards neatness, but it doesn't really reflect, the way a team, 6 forwards and 6 defenders. I think there are far more defenders on the park nowadays than there are attackers when teams genuinely set up. But and it's the same with midfielders as well. Like Brian Fenton is an eye-catching midfielder in that he's an old school midfielder. But Brian Howard played right through the middle, all through the championship. He spent as much time around the middle of the park as anybody else. So I think in any year, I think players who are nominated in the half-forward line could very easily be selected in midfield.
Who's going to win Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year, Conor?
I have to say my selection for Young Player of the Year, I thought Howard was exceptional, and I know David Clifford was exceptional too. I think in the All-Star in the Footballer of the Year shortlist, I think if the shortlist went to 4, I think Brian Howard would have been on it, and I think if the shortlist went to 5, I think David Clifford would have been on it. So in any year, you're doing well to get the Young Footballer of the Year on the All-Star team. This year, there's 2 certs of All-Stars in the Young Footballer of the Year. So look, it's a player's vote, and I think historically in Player of the Years and Player of the Months, I think the Dublin vote tends to get very diluted, or they tend not to win these votes. So I would give it to Howard, but I think Clifford will win it. Again, a lot of what Clifford did this year was very, very eye-catching, and very, very spectacular. And people are very prone to footballers of his style because he's exceptional. And the Footballer of the Year, again, I thought Kieran Kilkenny was absolutely exceptional, but there might be, I think people are kind of, again, you're talking about a vote of intercounty players, and I think intercounty players would be more inclined to go with Brian Fenton. He came very close, I think, a couple of years ago. Was it the year that Lee Keegan won it, or was that last year? Maybe the year before. 2 years ago when Lee Keegan won it. And I think what Fenton does, again, it's a bit more eye-catching than the nuts and bolts of, Kieran Kilkenny's influence. But for me, it's Kieran Kilkenny, but I have a feeling that Fenton will probably get the nod. It's
funny because I would have given it to McCaffrey on the basis that he was the best player in the semi-final and final, and I understand that it's an of the year award, but the point you were making earlier on about Cluxton being clutch in the big games, that should decide, for me, that should decide the All-Stars. That should be we don't have a regular season where everybody plays the same number of games. So the bigger games should have 10 times the weighting of an early round Munster Championship clash.
But Fenton and Kilkenny were brilliant in the semi-final and final as well, which is the counterpoint to that. Despite the fact that I actually kind of agree with you that McCaffrey, based on that, should win the gong.
Yeah, well, Jack McCaffrey was man of the match, I think, in both of the All-Ireland semi-final and the final, which, he came from not having played in the early parts of the year to being a cert for an All-Star. So I'd love to know, again, this comes down to a player's vote. So sometimes it can be a popularity contest rather than an actual reliable indication of who the Footballer of the Year was. And I think Jack McCaffrey is another one of those players that would probably appeal to the intercounty players. Everybody loves Jack McCaffrey. Everybody loves the way he plays on the front foot, playing with that pace, relentlessly attacking. And he added a kind of another string to his bow this year, which was attacking opposition kickouts, which he just didn't have in the past. I think there was 4 or 5 opposition kickouts in the semi-final and the final that he turned over for Dublin that they turned into scores. So again, look, I think he's a justifiable footballer there if he does get it, albeit, you know, I think Kilkenny and Fenton's body of work is probably, bigger. Fair
enough. Conor, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Cheers, lads.
It's Conor McKeon. You can read his stuff in the Herald now. Our breakfast menu this morning, we're going to talk to you about Neville versus Redknapp, the rugby gluttony, WADA's future, quite big in Doha.
Yeah, it's this is obviously news to you.
The 2018 All-Stars as well.
Well, we've kind of done the All-Stars at this point, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So I'm just going to make sure that I get the right page here. So it's page 23. It's all the way into page 23. I mean, not a lot of readers get to page 23 of The Sun. I'm not going to lie to you, but so here it is actually in the newspaper this morning. He will be, okay, make sure you don't get distracted. He'll be eating his Christmas turkey through a straw. They were the only ones, the good people at The Sun, the only ones who followed up yesterday's story, and so therefore...
I know, Goss.ie did as well.
Oh, sorry, and Goss.ie. Well, Goss.ie... There's Goss.ie. Exclusive, Tony McGregor accepts offer to fight Owen Sheehan. And they spelled your name right. That's a good picture of you, Owen.
No, it's not, but thanks.
It's an exclusive in the Goss and it's exclusive in the Sun. The Goss exclusive is that they saw Tony's Instagram, right?
I think they spoke to Tony as
well.
They
spoke to Tony, all right. Because then the Sun is not really an exclusive because they also spoke to Tony, but they did get...
different quotes.
I think they got the quote of the year. Viral sensation Tony, 59, Owen.
I thought he's 58.
59.
Oh, well then, I'm very confident.
Viral sensation Tony, 59, is raring to go after he was called out by the off-the-ball presenter and is already in training for the brawl. Smack-talking Tony last night told the Irish Sun, everybody has a plan until a hydrogen bomb goes off in their face.
You know, it is true.
It's going to punch you with a hydrogen bomb in the face, Owen. And your face is going to explode. Your flesh will crawl.
I didn't want to show any weakness this morning, but I can confirm a hydrogen bomb has never exploded in my face before, so I'm not able to train for that moment, I dare say. But I'll sure as hell do my best to withstand said hydrogen bomb.
There I was, minding my own business and putting in the training in Heaton Boxing Academy. I was putting the work in, slipping, ducking, hooking and jabbing, when all of a sudden young Mr. Sheehan decides to call me out of nowhere. This guy's just having the crack, minding his own business. When you, snivelling slimeball, reptile, climb out of nowhere from wherever swamp you're from and go, yeah, I'm going to have you, old man.
Are you on his side?
I'm going to orphan his children, you said.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that line, to be honest, because that would mean removing both parents from the equation. So sorry about that one. But I meant everything else I said.
If I'm being honest, I think he's taking leave of his senses. Does he want Santa to rearrange his face for Christmas? That means he's gonna arrive in the ring dressed as Santa Claus, and you are gonna have to beat up Santa Claus.
I'm gonna be, I don't know.
The Grinch?
It's gonna be like that scene in Elf when Santa beats up Will Ferrell and they smash a little Lego. Except it's gonna be the opposite of that. The elf shall be winning this particular bout comprehensively.
He'll be eating his turkey through a straw was the one. Obviously, that was the line from the Instagram post. I've never done boxing. My father was a boxer. It skips a generation, I suppose. I might not have a lot of experience, but what I do have is an explosive right shoulder, and I also have on tap any nuggets the Notorious wants to throw my way. He's no idea what he's in for. So there you go.
I know exactly what I'm in for. I'm in for walk in the park. A good tune-up to start my boxing career, to go 1-0 and insert myself into the box rec top 100 in the world, pound for pound.
News Talk presenter Sheehan, 24, got the ball rolling when discussing...
How do they know my age? Somebody's leaking shit to the Sun.
Who?
I don't know. It's probably you. You called me a snivelling slime ball just a moment ago, so you probably have a propensity to leak shit.
I would not leak anything. If anybody wants to tap me up for stuff, just email me.
Go. Flying through the sky. I'm terrified.
If one of those hit your head, it would explode. If one of those hit your head, it would...
Kind of like the mountain and that poor guy in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he pops his eyes out, doesn't he?
Yeah, but his head kind of explodes as well. I guess that would be kind of an unpleasant way to go. But
For the sake of that old man's brain, I'd better not call him out, said Eoin Sheehan. I mean, Owen, this stuff is going to haunt you forever. Like, when you go for a job, like in the real world, at some point, when your media career is over, when you've finally used up all your hot takes and you have to go and get a job as an accountant or in the bank, they'll be like, you said here, for the sake of that old man's brain, I'd better not call him out. And yet you did call him out.
Yeah.
So you showed wanton disregard for that man's brain.
I'm a walking contradiction of a man having called him out after saying I wouldn't call him out and spare his poor brains. But, sometimes you got to destroy some brains to keep your own pride, and that's what's going to happen here, I'm afraid.
In fairness, Tony McGregor, actually, he has a sneaking respect for you, his opponent. It's only you in the paper, it's his class. Right? He's up for it, I'm up for it. He has no idea what he's in for, though. There are two things in life I don't like: coinage and challenges. And he's thrown down the challenge. He's really getting into it, I have to be honest. I really admire young Mr. Sheehan, but he is in for a rude awakening.
Well, I guess there is sort of a mutual respect here between Tony and I. I would kind of see Tony as a bit of a samurai, sort of wise and old, and very old, really. That's kind of the big comparison. A samurai who's been around the block for quite some time, has spoken to a lot of wise people, but kind of has a higher opinion of their own wisdom than really exists. So there is a begrudging respect for Tony as well. And, game appreciates game. But on this particular occasion, I'm afraid I will have to make his head explode.
All right, on that note, we're moving on back to something on the breakfast menu here. The 2018 All-Stars we've done. What's this Koi Big and Doha?
So Gianni Infantino saying that the idea of expanding the World Cup is going to be brought forward to 2022. So we're going to the World Cup in Qatar. So this was supposed to be, the 48-team World Cup was supposed to be in the year 2026. But
The North American one.
Yeah, but then Infantino was like, nah, actually, we'd rather we get all that extra money and that extra cash and that extra worldwide acclaim, and we'll do it 4 years earlier. So it's possible. But will it happen in 2022? You know me. It is possible, he said. So Qatar, of course, are spending billions. They're building 8 stadiums and constructing a huge infrastructure to host a 32-team tournament at the moment. But it seems that if they're going to build essentially a new footballing industry over there, then why not do it 4 years earlier? They've already got to work on it. Would you go to Qatar if you got there?
No, I'm not going to Qatar.
You said the same thing about Russia?
Yeah, and I didn't go there either.
You would have gone, though, if Ireland qualified.
I wouldn't. I don't think I would have. I mean, in retrospect, I should have. It would have been a mistake. But
do you think you'll have the same retrospective view of Qatar after
don't think so.
2022?
Don't think so.
Very, very different reservations. At least, the stadiums were there, and the Russians didn't actually have to abuse human rights to actually get the stadiums built, which is, I guess, a positive. Well, we don't know. We don't know. We can't say anything for sure when it comes to World Cups. But I basically just wanted to get everybody's hopes up this morning that we're going to go to Doha in 2022, and that's that. What's next on the breakfast menu?
Next on the breakfast menu is WADA's future. So for the last, for the last couple of years, everybody has kind of looked at the whole way that WADA came into existence. So WADA is the World Anti-Doping Agency, in case you're unaware, and they're the ones who are responsible for setting the policy and implementing global policy against doping in sport. But it turns out that WADA has very close links with the International Olympic Committee. Effectively, the IOC invented the World Anti-Doping Agency as a shield to say, oh, we're very serious about this issue of doping in sport. We realise that it's very bad for our sponsors and business, and so therefore we're going to pretend that we're interested in getting to the bottom of anti-doping, the issue of doping all around the world. And WADA came into being and has been largely very toothless, has not got too many real track record of success when it comes to eradicating doping, reducing the instances of doping, giving you a sense that what you're watching is clean. On the other hand, it's worked perfectly as a shield for the Olympic Games, which has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, despite the fact that nobody really believes anything they see at the Olympics anymore. We tend to watch it like it is wrestling entertainment. There have been calls, more repeated and strong calls from various organisations around the world, including Sport Ireland. And I think the minister finally...
Yeah, the minister was in Washington yesterday for this event. So there was an emergency meeting at the White House yesterday, which basically called on Reedy to resign as WADA chief. So Jim Carroll, who you know is Donald Trump's Deputy Director of National Drug Control Policy, he was joined by sports ministers from 7 governments. So Ireland is one of 7 governments that was represented yesterday, anti-doping leaders and prominent athletes to call for urgent reform. So they basically issued a declaration calling for widespread reform and a robust, independent inquiry following the recent allegations of bullying and intimidation at WADA. So it goes a little bit deeper than a conflict of interest. There's been a collective loss of confidence in WADA, says the article here from Matt Lawton in the Irish Daily Mail. Now, Travis Tygart was also at this event yesterday. He, of course, is the chief executive of USADA. You'll know him from, I guess, being a big part of bringing down Lance Armstrong. He really delivered the most damning assessment of WADA yesterday. He said normal business at WADA was no longer acceptable, adding it's time for change. Then he was asked directly if Reedy should resign, and he said in relation to that question, we've called for him to either step down from the IOC or step down from WADA. You can't promote and police your sport. It's the fox guarding the hen house. We've been clear about that. It's a good line, isn't it? You can't promote and police your sport. The fox guarding the hen house. So it's a fair point. You know, as you point out there, it is a conflict of interest representing the IOC and representing the dream that is clean sport, and also representing the reality that is WADA and anti-doping. You can't have both. You can't be the fox and the hen.
No, it doesn't work. I mean, it does work if your interest is making money and helping everybody get rich. It's a brilliant way of doing things. It's exactly the way you would set up a business. If you were the mafia, for example, we'll set up this shell company here that's like, trying to, catch all the mafioso. Oh, look, it's exactly what you would do. Let's move on. Next item on our breakfast menu this morning is rugby gluttony.
Yeah, Tommy Martin in the Irish Examiner this morning pondering, I guess, when will we ever reach peak rugby? Are we getting close? He talks about the amount of games that we now see. He makes a lot of Krispy Kreme references here, which I'm all game for. He says, the November international tests look like they've indulged in a few too many chocolate custards, I should say. I don't know what are chocolate custards?
I guess they're things with the custard stuffed.
Is it like a chocolate top donut with custard inside?
I mean, I presume so, yeah.
That is gluttony right there. The clue is in the fact that the November international is now actually start in October and finish in December. The extra flab spilling over like builder's cleavage from World Rugby's shrink-fit 3-week official window. Basically saying it's getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and compares it to football, saying that Sean England, the Guardian, last week came up with the statistic that there were 87 live football matches available to British television viewers last week. Are we going to reach a point where rugby fans actually quite like the way things are right now, which they probably do, or are we going to reach a point where it just spills over into kind of
apathy?
Yeah, like, do we feel that way about football?
Well, if everything is important, what's important?
Well, there is that. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure have we yet even reached the point of peak football.
I think it happened about 10 years ago.
I think you can be selective.
You give a shit about the Europa League.
You can be selective about what you care about.
Do you give a shit about the Europa League?
If your team was in it, yes.
You cared about Arsenal in the Europa League?
Yes.
Like, properly?
Yeah, if they win the thing, they qualify for the Champions League.
But, like,
they've got to win those games against Vorskla.
Are you watching those games?
I've watched every game so far, yeah.
Full 90 minutes. Like, you're on your phone. You're on your phone.
I was on my phone for a good bit of the last one. That was probably the best one. Well, the closest one. Are you on your phone during most soccer games?
All games.
Well, that's because a lot of them are kind of boring. Like, are you on your phone because of the standard of the game, or are you on your phone because you've got an overload of football as a result of too many other games?
Well,
like during the World Cup, I was barely on my phone. It was like
fair enough.
A lot of excellent games.
Fair enough, right? The World Cup, this thing that happens once every 4 years, had your full attention.
Yeah.
But so your team is in the Europa League. Random Champions League night. Are you watching the 6 o'clock or the 5:55 and the 8 o'clock kickoff? Are you watching them both?
Yeah, well, Champions League, same as the World Cup, top quality.
Not all top quality.
The games that I would select to watch are. So
loads of shit teams in them.
The fact that you've got this huge array of options.
Or are you watching the Goal Show? Goal Show, I'm all in favour of the Goal Show.
The Goal Show's amazing. It's like Red Zone. It's just perfect television.
I'm totally happy to watch that. No, I'm less happy now to sit and watch a full, like, 2 random teams who I have no connection to.
Well, the random teams would almost make it more interesting, It's like, say if you're watching Liverpool, as much as they are attractive on the eye, it's like, well, I know everything about this team. I know exactly who all the players are. Whereas if you're watching two random teams in the Champions League, it's like, oh yeah, that guy plays for that team now. Figuring out how the two teams set up, and it's like 40 minutes have already gone, and this still feels very, very novel. Like I would certainly get that feeling with most rugby at the moment. Certainly with Champions Cup, because of the relatively exotic nature of some of the teams that they play, and it's like, oh, they've got that All Black playing for them now. And when it comes to the November tests, like England against the All Blacks, for example, absolute banquet. Everybody will be watching that. All of Ireland's tests, 100%. At what point does it tip into a point where you're like, I'm actually fatigued with watching rugby?
I think a European Super League, like an NFL style, 32 teams, which leads to, and that season uninterrupted, and then you have the international season, will be perfect. And everybody will be happy. The players will be happy with the right number of games. There will be a huge amount of money because you've got massive TV markets that you're selling stuff in. The international boards could own a portion of the league. The team owners could own the rest of the league. The players could have a share in the league.
I think from a purely spectator's point of view, the way the rugby calendar is set up now is close to perfect. Really, I really think that. So you get the start of the season, new Pro 14 year, there's novelty in that. First couple of games, you don't get fatigued, and then after the first couple of games, you're into interpros. Competitive nature, really good games, all Irish players, potential test players, really interesting. Then you're into the Champions Cup, for reasons I just said it, really interesting for 2 weeks. Then you got the November tests, really interesting. Then you're back to interpros.
Some of the November tests are really interesting. Like the game against USA is interesting because they have some Irish people involved. Rugby there is starting to take off, but it's not really.
But it's interesting because of the rookie-ish nature of the Ireland team. Like this Saturday, for example, seeing Jordan Larmour at fullback, seeing Joey Carberry starting at 10 alongside Luke McGrath at 9. Like there's a novel nature to all of that.
We traditionally play 3 tests.
Well, yeah, okay, that's the point.
Maybe this biannual trip to America becomes every second year we will play 4 tests, and things start to improve in terms of the level of interest that we have. But so next year, in 2 years' time, they'll probably make us play the States. Like in America, it's not really that interesting. Did you watch Ireland against the States
2 years ago?
Or Ireland against Japan? No, 2017.
Last summer, yeah, I did.
Did you?
Didn't watch Japan. I watched the USA. Japan was a bit of an awkward time, if I recall. But like the USA, was that Gary Ringrose's international debut?
I don't know.
I can't remember. But I do remember watching the game. And I remember watching it because it was, as I say, a newish Ireland team. I think when you're playing...
I think it was on the same day as the Lions tests.
Yeah, it was on later on that evening. So you had the Lions in the morning, you had the USA game in the evening. So you had new players that you hadn't seen wear the green jersey before.
Yeah. All right.
Like I think there's always an incentive.
Okay, so you are the absolute primo. They would refer to you as a pig as a customer because you will spend whatever. Well, you probably
no. The absolute pigs will be watching Pro 14 this weekend. I will not be watching Pro 14 this weekend.
What's Neville versus Redknapp?
Neville versus Redknapp is the beef of the day. The new segment, beef of the day, and it features Gary Neville and Harry Redknapp. So Gary Neville had a right pop of Tottenham Hotspur, saying that they've been spineless for 30 years, but saying that the current side aren't so spineless. And Harry Redknapp was on TalkSport, as you do, and wasn't too plussed with how Gary Neville approached him. He says, when he managed Valencia, they were the worst Valencia team, probably not just in the last 30 years, but in their history. And he also says the things about, like, how dare you slag off the likes of Raphael van der Vaart and William Gallas and all those great Spurs players and call them spineless. Just one of these public spats, once again, pundits being slammed for their views because of what they've achieved. Are your views of Gary Neville's opinions coloured because of his miserable failure at Valencia, or should they be? Certainly in Harry Redknapp's eyes they are, much like Keith Andrews' views might have been coloured by the view that he hadn't managed a team in the eyes of Robbie Savage. Or gave away the ball a couple of times in the eyes of Seamus Coleman. Well,
I think, so there's his analysis of a game and why it's happening, fair game. But also, it's now legitimate for people to go, how did your managerial career work out? When you tried to change the culture of Valencia, how did that work out for you? Not very well, Gary, did it? Are we showing the tweet now? Gary Neville tweeted, I love this new phenomenon of Sky pundits punditing on their own punditry. It'll be interesting to see who comes out of this and says they told their players to get Gary Neville and he can't run and so on. Steve McCall No, that's not Steve McCall. Steve McMahon believes Gary Neville's comments. Here's the audio of Steve McMahon.
Interesting to see what comes out in the next few days and maybe coming weeks of players and managers who have sent teams out to play against Gary Neville and said, get at Neville, he can't run. This guy can't run, he can't defend, because that's what will happen now. And no wonder Harry has said, and this is where he's got a monkey on his back with Valencia. So he's tough talking, fine, and I do like the way he talks, and fair play to him. But sometimes you've got to reel it in a little bit, because the Valencia thing will come back to bite him big time, and it already is.
I think fair play, right? Like, and what Gary Neville has done is try and shut that down so that nobody else in Sky is going to have a go at him. That's the point of that tweet, right?
Yeah, it probably is.
He's editing all future conversations, saying, I'm getting paid way more than you guys are. You're getting paid to show up. They pay me, like, even on the days I'm not here. That's what Gary Neville's doing. He's throwing his big balls around the place and going, here, have a bit of that.
Editorialising what other people are going to say about him reduces his opinion to actually get more coverage as a pundit. So, you know, all pundits want to do is make a name for themselves, sure.
Well, yeah, all right. That'll be interesting to see how, if Steve McMahon shows up again on Sky, or if he doesn't.
Just disappears.
The number of times, the over-under on the number of times Steve McMahon is going to be on Sky again, I'm putting it at 0.5, and I'm taking the under. Unless he comes on and apologises. Obviously, it's great that he got that experience. Now he can talk with intimate knowledge of what it's actually like in the changing room. He's a much better pundit because he's a failed manager than he was. That's what the explanation will be. So
failed experiences don't count.
We'll see. Darren.
Good morning, Ger.
You come in with pitchfork. Your turf is on fire.
Well, I'm most annoyed by the
You're trying
suggestion
to hunt Dave
that
McIntyre.
I am the rat. Like,
no one said it on air, did they?
Suggested that.
Well, it was intimated. The point I will make is there were two stories about this in the media yesterday. One from Goss.ie, reputable entertainment organisation, and one from The Sun, equally reputable entertainment organisation, and both quote the same person. I would guess that the person quoted in both of those pieces is the person who might have sent a call or text saying, guys, this is what I'm doing.
Tony McGregor?
Yes.
100%. Tony McGregor's an influencer who understands how the media works.
Absolutely.
Whereas Owen here is caught in the crossfire. He's the one having the hydrogen bomb exploded in his face.
Are you saying that he's trying to artificially hype this thing up, Darren?
I'm not saying that. I'm suggesting it.
But how did they know that he's 24?
That's a good question. I don't know how they knew you're 24.
I mean, I wonder, can you Google Owen Sheehan age?
Is your age on your Twitter?
No.
Okay.
Well, I would never tweet my age.
No, but you know the way your date of birth is on your...
I'm neither confirming or denying they got my... confirming or denying that they got my age correct either.
Okay, so you could be 25.
He's 24. He's 24. I'll confirm it for you. I'll be the rat. He's 24.
Cheers, check
so
his
many
company
Ronans
records.
in the studio.
Hold on. I'm not running for president, but I will happily release my call logs for the last week and my text and WhatsApps. I have nothing to hide here. I have not spoken to any media organisation about this.
What about your Instagram DMs?
You're DMing Tony McGregor at the
Yeah,
moment.
but he's not a media organisation. He is a man who's going to beat on to death.
He is a media
Why are you on
organisation.
Tony's side in all of this?
Well, because you called me a rat half an hour ago.
It was actually... did I call you a rat?
How many people are you going to call out this week on?
Well, tons of people. And
First Tony, now me.
It's good to know you're not on my side, Darren.
I am on your side, but I'm
Tommy
not
calls you a rat, but nobody calls you a rat on air. That's what he said.
Tommy suggested I was the rat.
I just Googled Owen and there's a picture of him, 2 mics in hand, a bit phallic in DCU, and it says you're 20 in 2015, in January 2015. So you could only be 23 now.
Well, technically that maths does that up, but I'm neither confirming or denying they got that age correct in the Irish Independent.
Oh, and you're a tabloid darling now.
I've always been a tabloid darling. The tabloids just didn't realise it.
Now you've made the tabloids. I am a bit angry about the Cluxton thing. I'm more so sad, to be honest, because he is the greatest Gaelic football goalkeeper of all time. And the fact that...
Perplexed?
Bemused is a word I would use. I was a bit confused. I didn't really understand it. But at the same time, it'd be rude to say that Beggan doesn't deserve it.
You're not angry, you're disappointed.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm a little bit sad for Cluxton that... despite being the guy who probably revolutionised the game in many ways, that he's not recognised really for that in tangible awards. He's recognised in the fact that, like, the style of play, what Beggan does in a lot of ways, except for the long stuff and the marauding runs, he's copying Cluxton in a lot of ways. And a lot of keepers have copied what he's done, and he's written a new blueprint on how to be a Gaelic football goalkeeper over the last decade. I
feel so sorry for Stephen Cluxton myself. What has he ever won? I think all our hearts as a collective should go out to Stephen Cluxton. I don't think it's perplexing at all. I think it's personally reasonable to say Rory Beggan was the best goalkeeper this year.
Yeah, he probably was, but that's because obviously he played more games. Cluxton was injured. But at the same time, the fact that the best goalkeeper ever to lace up a pair of boots hasn't won an All-Star in 5 years, I mean, there's questions to ask there.
Yeah, it's a weird...
I mean, I had more questions last year than I did this year. This year I was just kind of like, oh, well, look, it seems like it's never going to happen. I would like to speak to someone. I would imagine that was the most contentious call of the entire All-Stars meeting. I'd like to speak to someone and find out.
Is Ryan McKeon a bit lucky to get in?
He didn't make it in my All-Star team, my PwC All-Star app team, which I selected last week, and I got 13 out of 15. But anyway, he wouldn't have made it into mine, but he deserves to be there given the way they reshuffled the pack and moved Kavanagh back and moved Howard back, and they freed up another forward position, and Ryan McHugh probably deserved this. And then it was kind of a toss-up elsewhere between Shane Walsh and Ian Burke. For me, completely respect the people who chose Ian Burke. I picked Shane Walsh personally just because of more spectacular performances, but Ian Burke probably more consistent throughout the year.
I thought Con would have been in there. I thought he would have been in with a decent shot.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay. I would have had Niall Scully ahead of Con.
Yeah. Well, Scully had a great year as well, but I just think Con in some of the more unspectacular jobs, some of the grunt work, I thought he did it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think maybe the fact that his point kicking wasn't as good as last year. He wasn't as spectacular in front of the post, probably let him down in terms of being... Like, ultimately, you do have to be a highlight player.
Yeah.
If you're not appearing regularly on the Sunday game highlights, then you really don't have a chance of making the All-Star team. Despite the fact that we did get more games this year and there is a more educated view of things. Like, really, with the Super 8s, this should be the most accurate All-Star team we've ever had.
I know he broke into the team late in the season as well. I know it was kind of after the Leinster stuff was got out of the way, but I thought Merchant could have been in with a shout.
Yeah.
Certainly as a debut year for him to come in, and the first year I suppose he became a starter. I thought he was really just immense from his first appearance, and then he set out one of the Super 8 games and came back into the team, and I definitely thought he was in with a really good chance. I was a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, you look at the team and you can't say anyone in the team doesn't deserve their place.
I think Cluxton probably deserved it more, though.
Yeah. There's arguments to be made, and we'll be arguing about that all week. But Dublin are toasting the magnificent 7 awards at the PwC All-Stars. Johnny Cooper, James McCarthy, Jack McCaffrey, Brian Fenton, Brian Howard, Paul Mannion and Kieran Kilkenny are all waking up as All-Stars in that way where you wake up and you probably just get a text to inform you you've won it. A little bit anticlimactic in the way that it's done this year for the footballer anyway, but they're second in the Roll of Honour with the All-Star winners now, 123 for Dublin, behind Kerry 141, 3 awards for Monaghan as well, including the coveted keeper spot. While in soccer, it was an eventful night for former Limerick defender Paddy O'Connor. He hit the net and was sent off as Arsenal overcame Blackpool 2-1 in the League Cup. They'll play Tottenham in the quarterfinals of that competition. 2 goals from Heung-min Son helped Tottenham to a 3-1 win at West Ham. Elsewhere, Chelsea will host Bournemouth. Frank Lampard's return to Stamford Bridge for the first time as a manager ended in a disappointing defeat. Richard Keogh scored an own goal. Chelsea beat Derby County 3-2 to progress. Middlesbrough will play League One Burton Albion in the quarterfinals following their 1-0 win over Crystal Palace last night. Well, Arsene Wenger has confirmed he will be returning to management next year. The former Arsenal boss currently taking a break from football, having spent 22 years in charge of the North London club with big vacancies around the world, including the Real Madrid job. Wenger said his preference is to be outside of England.
I said many times maybe the best way is not to be in England because I spent so much time in the same club. It would be seen odd to go somewhere else. As a manager, you have influences on the individual career of the players, on the style of play and the results, but as well on the structure. I think that is very important as well, that the club can always continue at a very good level.
The Edinburgh Derby was uglier than usual last night. Neil Lennon hit by a coin thrown by a supporter. Hearts goalkeeper Bobby Zlamel was also punched by a fan, while both assistant referees were struck by objects at Tynecastle. We'll hear from Lennon in a moment. But first, the Hearts manager Craig Levine wants supporters involved in the ugly scenes banned for life.
So it's a hell of a shot. It was a pound coin as well, so the game must be flush. So I hope the club or the authorities can identify this guy, and maybe I'll get to meet him one day face to face.
Have you got a message to these people that turn up and...
Don't come. Don't want to hear.
Somebody throwing a coin to Neil are unforgivable, and I hope
the police manage to get whoever they are, whatever team they support, and deal with them, because there's no place for that. And I understand that passions are high and it's tense, but it's just not acceptable.
Well, finally, the former Italy striker Vincenzo Equinta has been handed a 2-year prison sentence for illegal gun possession. The former Juventus player was a member of Italy's winning World Cup team in 2006. He was one of 148 people standing trial for alleged links to a major Italian crime syndicate. The judge said there was no proof that he was a member of that mafia and found he was not linked to the crime syndicate. At least there was no proof of that. The court ruled, though, that Equinta illegally possessed 2 guns on behalf of his father, who at the time was under a court order banning him from keeping firearms due to links to that mafia syndicate.
Wow. I mean, wow. That's a proper story.
That's a big story coming out of Italy this morning.
He's doing 2 years in prison.
2 years in prison. He does have the...
not the imaginary kind of, we put you in prison. Like house arrest,
no,
not really.
He does have the right to appeal. He's been handed a 2-year prison sentence, but he has the right to appeal.
And not suspended either.
No.
All right. Okay.
Not yet.
Some quick comments for you. Making a lot of excuses why Cluxton didn't get it. Sounds like you're convincing yourselves he should have got it, says Shane Manton on Facebook. I don't really know what you mean, Shane.
Or else we've just said a lot of reasons why he didn't deserve it.
Jonathan Jason, another man with 2 first names, never trust them. Would Mayo win All Irelands with Cluxton? 0. Mayo bottlers win nothing.
Like insult to injury. A rough year for Mayo, a rough morning, and then that. Bottlers who win nothing.
But Mayo were the only team to pressure Cluxton kickouts and completely rattled both him and Dublin in 16 and 17, says Dara O'Toole.
Not true. Kerry?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Kerry in the semi-finals?
The thing is, it's just... You can cop out with so many of the All-Star decisions, but you can't cop out with the goalkeeper because there is only one. Explain to any of the Mayo players over the last couple of years, sorry, you were so bloody good, but on each and every one of those years, there was one team that was better than you. Well, maybe you deserved one of those All-Irelands. No, you didn't, because in each and every year, Dublin were better than you on that given day. David Clarke was better than Stephen Cluxton last year.
Both years?
Beggan was better than Stephen Cluxton this year. I'm trying to recall 2 years ago what exactly happened that David Clarke didn't... getting it over Cluxton didn't get as much fanfare.
What year was he dropped for the final?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So was it a sympathy vote from the All-Star Committee?
I don't know. I don't know. Irish Blue says, I hear kicking a ball requires a degree in physics. Dear Lord, Gaelic football is an awful sport devoid of any saving grace. Thanks for that. Mick Crossan says, Cluxton snubbed. Beggan was better all round. Brody was the best shot stopper. #reputation, #performance, #OTB AM. Tyke Rowan says, I actually think it was worse him not getting picked the previous 2 years than this one. Though when you see Aidan O'Shea with more All-Stars than Connolly, that sums them up really. Jonathan Anon says, who's not that anonymous if your name is Jonathan, I think there was an assumption that Cluxton should win every year just because he's in the winning team, but because Dublin are so dominant, it means he has a lot less to do than everybody else. If you think kicking the ball out to a teammate is less to do than everybody else, I think you're wrong. That's your view on that one. Killian Whelan says, snub seems a bit strong. Cluxton would have had a stronger case in previous years. He was behind Beggan and possibly Brody this year.
Well, the thing is, he was snubbed because you can get a great headline like this in the Sun. Snub-a-dub-dub, it says. Tabloid morning to you indeed. So I think he was snubbed.
Snub-a-dub-dub. Snub-a-dub-dub-dub-dub. It's 4 times.
Yeah, 4 times.
Well, take that up with the Sun.
Beggan had an interesting interview during the summer, I think it was with the Times Ireland, where he made the point about stats. He said you could statistically prove that Cluxton's best keeper because he probably has the highest retention rate and kick-out success rate in the country, but how many of his kick-outs are short? So he made a good point that,
Beggan said this?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Good man. He's standing up for himself.
He got a canvas.
Yeah.
Wow.
He made a point that, it's easy to retain short kickouts than it is to be adventurous and send them into the middle of the park.
Yeah, but when he does, he finds people in stride and sets them off on attacking runs that wins games. That's I think about that.
Even the short kickouts are platforms for attack nowadays.
All right. Thanks for that, Darren. More from Darren across the day on offthewall.com. And of course, we'll be back with us tomorrow as well, and on 98 FM every hour on the air.
Every hour on the hour. Some half hours too.
Right, let's move on. Ross Tucker joins us now to talk to us about that story that Martin Ziegler had yesterday about the amount of doping that's going on in underage rugby in South Africa. Ross, we just wanted to kind of try and get a sense from somebody who is on the ground in South Africa and kind of understands exactly what level the doping is at, because Ziegler had some very interesting stats for us yesterday and some very interesting anecdotes, which obviously are anecdotal, of parents and teachers injecting kids, their own kids and their students, to try and help them get to a point where they were going to be capable of winning professional contracts, which is a remarkable story, really, Ross.
Yeah, it is, but sadly predictable given the way that rugby is structured in South Africa. I don't know whether this is the same everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if it were, but in this country, if you're going to get a professional contract, you need to be seen at 18. But if you want to be seen at 18, you have to be seen at 16. And if you want to be seen at 16, you have to have been seen at 13. So we've created what's basically a race to the bottom. And the consequence of that is that parents and kids and coaches are saying, how do I improve my chances of getting into that shop window? How do I improve the probability that a scout at the next level up will see me and identify me as a talented player? And the answer is I have to be bigger and stronger and faster. And so it would be interesting to know the evolution of how it works, whether the parent first says, let's look at diet. And that's what we're going to work on. And then with every good intention in the world, they soon recognize that diet might not do enough. So they say, let's try some supplements. And of course, that's got a ceiling. And eventually you make the decision steroids. Or do they just go straight to doping? I don't know how that evolves. But the problem is we've created a race to the bottom. And parents with good intentions resort to not such good means to help get their kids ahead in life, as it were, as a rugby player.
This is genie out of the bottle territory where everybody feels like everybody else is doing it, and so therefore it becomes the new normal. It's what happened cycling, effectively.
Yeah, it takes one person for the whole system to basically collapse in on itself, because if everyone stopped at diet, then in theory it's just me versus you. But if 5 boys start doping and then I start getting left behind, well, then how do I catch up? And if the effect of drug use is that powerful, then you have to do it. You either give up and find another sport, or you don't and you take the drugs. And the problem in South Africa is that rugby is so much part of the psyche that young kids aspire to become Springboks, and they're going to go that way. And then layered onto that is the environmental changes where, and this is a bold assertion, but it seems to me that steroids have never been as available as they are now. You could walk into any fitness club and probably pick them up just by looking at who's the biggest guy on the floor and striking up a conversation. So I think the free availability, the pressures to succeed younger and younger and younger invites the parents to get involved. The coaches also get involved because there's tremendous prestige in winning at junior levels, and so the coach isn't going to stand in the way at best. At worst, he's going to contribute to it. It's just this perfect mixture of all the elements that you need for doping to happen.
Well, that thirst to succeed and that thirst to be bigger and stronger earlier is probably something that's not unique to rugby, and it's certainly not unique to rugby in South Africa. That's common with rugby in every single country. Are you surprised that potentially South Africa might be a more obvious example and an example that we've got a little bit more evidence to back up? Or do you feel that this is just kind of, to a certain extent, a little bit of an unfair reflection of South Africa, that it really is a worldwide problem?
Well, we test the boys at our annual competition. So here, I don't know how it works there in Ireland. I don't know how it works here in England, where I am at the moment, or in Australia, New Zealand. But we have a national schoolboy competition held every single year where the best players from each of the provinces go and compete. That is not the only window, but it's the main window at which the South African Rugby Union and the anti-doping authorities have the capability of testing those players. When those players play at their schools, they can't actually be tested unless the school initiates a testing program of its own, which sometimes does happen. But the reason I'm somewhat labouring that point is that in South Africa, we have a stage, a very specific period where the anti-doping authorities can go and test. They did this year 120 odd tests and they find 6 cases. So now we're in the dock basically as a function of having asked the question. I think, and I mean, I don't know this to be true, but I suspect that if other countries did the same thing, they would find the same result, that there is a doping problem in schoolboy rugby, because why would it be different in South Africa? And so I would imagine that this is a problem that exists globally, and I would hope that someone is going to take it upon themselves to look into it. I'm here in London actually at the moment attending a World Rugby Medical Conference, and one of the people attending it is the Chief Medical Officer of SA Rugby, and we spoke yesterday, and he has every intention of going to schoolboys next year and actually trying to do proper surveys of what is the extent of this problem? Because testing, as you guys know, only scratches the surface of what's actually going on, and no one really knows the extent beneath the testing and what the testing can do. So we're in the unknown, but we know enough to know we have a big problem here.
Well, in Ireland, the schoolboy system is outside of the IRFU's control. So the IRFU controls the players who play for the academies, but up until they leave school, technically they're still schoolboy rugby players. Maybe there's some crossover, but as soon as you enter the academy, you come under IRFU control. Until the point where you get an academy contract, you are still under the control of the school, and there is no testing. It is exempt from drug testing in Ireland. So the notion that we're sitting here going, well, it's a South African problem and nothing, we're 100% whiter than white. Nobody here is saying that. And it would be very interesting to see what would happen if we started testing schoolboy rugby in Ireland.
Yeah, so you're raising, so that's the third thing. So you've got the talent ID pathway has driven almost doping as a way to get ahead. The environment has made drugs readily accessible for relatively cheap to the player and the parent and the coach. And then the third part, which you've just alluded to, is there's no testing. So you basically have this enormous reward with very little risk, and that's why the problem exists. So how you stamp this out is you're not going to educate these players out of doping, in my opinion. We've spoken about this, I think, a month ago. You can do everything you want around education. If the player sees that there's one pathway to get my professional contract, he's taking it. And so the only way you can really do it is you can stop him from doping by increasing the likelihood that he's going to get caught and then sanctioning him appropriately when he is caught. But neither of those two things is happening. And so we're just hoping that people's moral conscience will stop doping, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't work. It has never worked ever. Because their moral conscience that they're told everywhere else is succeed, don't be a loser, be a winner. Like, the pressure is precisely to cheat, not to be good.
Correct. Never quit. So when you start falling behind your peers in every strength and speed test, don't quit. Do what it takes. Keep up. And that's the problem. So, and of course, the system, as I said, rewards those characteristics. And so everything is just pointing in that direction. So the authorities really need to look at this and get a hold on it. But you're dealing with minors, and as you said, it's the same here in SA Rugby, is they can't go into the schools and test the players. They don't have jurisdiction or custodianship or whatever the legal term is to do that.
That would be an important step for the schools organisations to say, we want these competitions to be clean, and the only way we can do that is to say that we will test our players. Like, at that point you need the parents to say, yeah, okay, we're going to allow you to test, but are parents going to say, yeah, we trust that our minor and the information that you're going to get from these blood tests won't fall into the wrong hands? Like, it gets into that whole privacy and personal data issue, which is obviously a hot button topic as well.
Yeah, there's that. Plus, if 10% of parents are complicit in the doping of their kids, they're not going to give permission to test and expose themselves. So it's not going to work on that basis either. So it needs maybe strong leadership to navigate some of those issues, but it seems at this point to be an unsolvable problem.
And we don't know the scale of it. That's the last point on this before I just want to get your thoughts on WADA. The point that you're making about the Chief Medical Officer of the South African Rugby Football Union having a survey of the kids, like, that's actually the most realistic and likely source for them to go, yeah, we're all doing it. This is how it happens. This is where you get it. Like, the intelligence gathering aspect of this is completely in its infancy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we being World Rugby did a survey at this year's Under-20 World Championships back in June I think it was, asking the players the same thing. And there are methods of surveying now where you never have 100% confidence that the person is telling you the truth. I mean, if you ask someone, do you take drugs? Most people would not trust you, even if you guarantee them an anonymity to answer that honestly. But there are methods of doing surveys now. The IAAF and WADA did one in elite track and field athletes, which suggested that perhaps up to 40% of track and field athletes will admit to doping. And we applied that same model to the Under-20 Rugby Championships this year. And the intention in my discussion yesterday was that he would be looking at doing the same. And I hope that we can actually encourage other countries, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, New Zealand, Australia, to look at doing the same thing so that we can get a global picture of what this problem looks like. It's very difficult to solve a problem if you don't know the scale of it, because you never know where you stand. And so this is the first step that has to be taken.
And what was were the results ever made public from the under-20 survey?
Still being looked at, I think. I chatted yesterday to the guy who did that. I hope by the end of this year that is published, or at least made available.
Yeah, okay, well that will be really interesting, because there's definitely ways of asking people questions about what they think their competitors are doing, which kind of gives you an insight into what they think, where the moral bar is set, you know, like that. It is that whole kind of notion. Do you think everybody else in this race is clean? Yes, no, if not, why not? And it's like, well, because, you know, like that's where I think some of the surveying starts to get a bit more sophisticated. I did want to ask you about the situation with WADA at the moment. It's interesting that finally people are waking up to the whole notion of the way that WADA was constituted being completely wrong in the first place. I'm so exhausted by these stories that I'm not quite sure that a solution will be delivered that is the right solution, that and some other kind of fudge isn't on the agenda here that we haven't yet seen.
There's definitely an apathy, because the conversation has been going for years. You've had it longer than I've had it, and the latest is this challenge that's been issued. There's a meeting at the White House. People are saying WADA is not fit for purpose. The same stuff is coming up, but you get the impression, having read, and I'm sure you read it, the response that the head of WADA, Craig Reedy, in response to the cycling calls, the Becky Scott, who stood down as the athletes chair or the commission chair, you get the impression that they don't really care and that they know that there's no change imminent. And so there's an apathy around the discussion that just leaves us gridlocked. What's changing?
Yeah, that's definitely what feels it's going to happen. So, is there any way that WADA could actually be fixed, or is that just a completely ridiculous notion at this point?
It seems like the structure at the top there between the IOC and WADA is that WADA is too weak to do the job. Well, it's not been set up to do the job, but it's been set up well enough to survive. And so it's like hanging from the fingertips, and it's strong enough to hold itself there, but not strong enough to climb back up onto the ledge. And that's the stalemate that we seem to be in. And I mean, I can't believe, with the number of attacks on WADA's integrity in the last 4 or 5 weeks since their actions on Russia, and the criticism from athletes, from other anti-doping agencies, yet the same people are in charge, and they will be in charge all the way to the next Olympic Games. It's actually astonishing. Imagine a company accused of the negligence that WADA was. The board and the leadership of the company wouldn't survive, but nothing changes. It's interesting, I'm going to Rome next week, actually. WADA invited me to attend a scientific conference on the biological passport and the future of that tool. I hope saying this doesn't get me uninvited, but the interesting thing is the tools that WADA had, the science, the biological passport, that stuff is now secondary, tertiary in the debate. The big issue seems to be the political conflicts and the agendas that undermine WADA at the very top, you know, the leadership issues. So we can have meetings about what WADA needs to do and how the testing can improve and what the sanction needs to be, that you should put tramadol on the banned list, that you should take this substance off and put that on. That's looking for pennies on the floor. And the big issue is the €100 note sitting here on the table, and that's political trust is zero. There's absolutely no leadership trust in WADA at the moment. And until someone can wrestle that leadership away, it won't change. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, maybe a sport or a set of sports can say we're no longer going to be signatories to WADA because we've had it. We're fed up. We don't trust that they're going to deliver anti-doping. And what we're going to do is we're going to allocate 2%, 5% of our revenues to set up an independent body, which is then going to regulate and oversee us. And we're going to be separate from WADA. So in the same way that the NFL and the NBA are not members of WADA, so they do their own anti-doping, it might get to a point where sport breaks away from WADA. But is sport going to play hostage games with its own Olympic participation? Because that's what they potentially put on the line. So I don't know, but it's maybe we're getting to a tipping point, but it feels like we aren't.
That wouldn't necessarily make things any better, Ross, breaking away and in-house anti-doping.
No, because eventually you'll end up in the same position. because someone's always being paid by someone else. And the moment there's a transaction like that, there's a conflict. So I don't know how you'd set it up. You'd have to set it up to actually incentivize them to catch you. So imagine me paying you to catch me.
Yeah, it's not going to work. Definitely not going to work.
There's a paradox there.
Yeah, you end up with like 1-game bans for people taking steroids, like, or 2-game bans, or the NFL substance abuse policy has been abused. It's 4 games. Like, he misses a quarter of the season and he's back looking buff and happy and had a rest. You're at the World Rugby Conference on concussion, I think. Are there any early indications yet of the change in the tackle rule having a positive impact on the numbers, or is it far too early and too small a sample size?
Yes to both. So the conference is our annual medical meeting. We meet every year roughly this time, and we discuss, among other things, concussion obviously being the hot button. We have data now from the world's major club competitions, and certainly we previously saw an increase every single year in concussion numbers. For the first time, and this is true across all competitions, that's either leveled off or come down. So we're encouraged by that, but we also understand that one season alone is not enough because there's so many other things changing. At those under-20 champs early this year, we saw a 50% reduction in the concussions, but it's only a 30-match tournament. So we're encouraged enough to say that we're heading in the right direction, but we have to constantly reinforce the message because, as you know, every single week, or it seems like, there's a controversy around the card or a sanction, and there's considerable pushback from one side and pushing forward from the other. And so trying to manage some of those tensions is the main challenge at this stage, I think, working towards consistency of sanction. But we're confident enough that we're going in the right direction. Whether we're going fast enough is another question.
Yeah, okay. Well, that small sample size is a good and positive indicator, because we're talking about the future of the game. If it doesn't get under control, parents are going to start really questioning whether or not they can send their kids to play, and that becomes this kind of vicious circle that you really can't ever interrupt. So any way of interrupting the number of concussions is going to be seen as a massive positive.
Yeah, and so we're committed to that. I think everyone is, and I think that the research that was done and the initiatives that have come off it, the question now is one of degree, because we had those 3 phases. Phase 1 was harsher sanction. Phase 2 is to try and do it post-match and do it as almost a high tackle sighting, which we're exploring at the moment in a big study. And phase 3 is what's being researched soon in the English Championship Cup competition, where they're actually going to literally lower the height of the tackle. So the question is, which of those achieves the desired change without changing too much? The big paradox in this issue always is, how do you change without change? Because there comes a point where you change the sport and then people will reject it. So you want to change the injury risk without basically compromising the DNA of the sport. And that's a tricky balance to find.
Well, best of luck with that, Ross. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
No, it's good. Thanks again.
It's Ross Tucker. To change the sport without changing it.
Yeah, it's almost as if that the possible solution, and not on rugby concussion there, but on anti-doping there, is going to make things worse. It depends how much trust you place in each and every sport to promote clean sport.
So you do none, but what you might do with the breakaway is they could all contribute to a central pot, and then individual governments or a bunch of governments could come together and say, right, if you practice this sport in this country, we're the anti-doping organisation and we're going to match the funding that comes from the sport, but it'll be a state-run thing. And at that point, you start getting guys with guns and badges coming along and saying, you've got a kind of weird epidemiology of shopping on these sites that are, oh look, they're sending steroids through the postal system, which we've just got. Gotcha, buddy. Like, that's when you start kind of, it becomes an interagency government thing, as opposed to this quasi-legal organisation which is really effectively owned by the IOC, or certainly they have a controlling interest in it, which, as I said, ultimately ends up being a shield for the organisation.
You incentivise catching people, rather than incentivising cheating, which is currently the case. So it's the lesser of two evils, I would say. Like, is incentivising catching people out really full of positives? Like, I would say it's certainly better than the current situation, but there's flaws in it as well.
Yeah, nothing's perfect. It's too easy to cheat, and it's too much reward for it as well. Ronan O'Gara was in the studio last night with Joe. Here he is talking about his own prospects as coach and when he might get into head coach role.
Hesitation says it all, is it? No, attempted, but would have been the right thing to do? No, I don't think so. But like, I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, I hope, and I wouldn't be frightened by it. I'd be hugely excited by it.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess I was going to say, you must feel or even have felt when the offers came in, I'm getting close to being ready to pull the trigger here.
Yeah, but I suppose it's not the be-all and end-all, really, I think, people get obsessed with titles. You gotta, I think when you're a secure person, you kind of get into an environment that you're happy with, that you know that you add value to, and that's what's happening with the Crusaders. The Crusaders doesn't have to be a stepping stone to anything. It's one of the best clubs in the world, and it's a great club to work at, and I'm sure I'm not the boss, but I have a good role there, and a role that kind of I feel very challenged in, and not alone by the staff, but by the players, and that's the biggest test, I think. The players will know when their coach isn't giving them the direction they want, and these are good All Blacks you're talking about.
Yeah, no doubt. So, family in Paris, will they come over to New Zealand with you for the 9 months in the next
Yeah, well, it's a shorter season this season again with the Rugby World Cup, so it's compact, but it would be, that's crucial, I think, from my headspace, is that it's you go on the journey together.
Yeah, so that full interview is available on youtube.com/offtheball. A couple of more texts. I just want to read these Rory Beggan quotes from the Times Ireland edition about being a goalkeeper. It's a pressure position now because teams are putting a serious emphasis on the big high press and pressing the kickouts a lot more. So it's a lot harder now to win your own kickouts. Throughout this year, I would have dealt with many different types of presses. And that's what's really improved me as a goalkeeper, working your way around them. Beggan points out with so many goalkeepers now opting for short kickouts, the stats and percentages can become a little bit skewed. Canvassing will, what is that word? Canvassing will prevent you from being considered. What's the phrase? What? If you canvass, anyway. If you're winning,
no idea.
If you canvass to try and win, you get kicked out.
Yeah, you're precluded from winning.
Yeah, what's that? There's a phrase. Anyway, if you're winning 21 out of 24 kickouts or whatever, are you kicking these wee chip outs? How are you winning the kickouts? Like, are you getting scores off your kickouts? Some teams have that strategy that they'll let you have your kickouts. That's part of their plan. And they're set up and ready for you then. Other teams go for the high press and hope to break it and win the 50-50 ball and attack from there. He's saying, I see what you're at, Dublin. Padding your stats. With your 4 All-Irelands.
It's true what they say about the Oscars as well. If you make a good movie, it doesn't matter. You've got to canvass it. You've got to make sure the right people see it and the right people are voting for it. And you can't say shit about the Academy. So Rory Beggan has done what all great movie directors do. And he's pushed his right to the forefront.
OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Some final comments for you about the snubbing of Stephen Cluxton.
Not a snub.
Snubbed, Beggan better all round, Brody best shot stopper. I did all those, so sorry. I think there's an assumption, did that one. Oh yeah, okay. Here, snubbed. Cluxton set the bar in terms of goalkeeping. Beggan over the league and championship reached that bar, thoroughly deserved. I'm sure Stephen Cluxton is happy with his All-Ireland medal, says Conor Sherry. And then after that, this one's interesting. With that logic, Sheehan's opinions on boxing/MMA/McGregor can't be taken seriously until he flails in Tony's direction in a ring.
I don't think my opinions on boxing or MMA are ever taken seriously, so I don't think that changes anything.
Would you be a flailer? There's a boxing, is there a boxing scene in The Office? Or did he?
Oh yeah. It's in a dojo, and Michael Scott fights twice.
No.
Yes, it is.
No. This is the original Office.
No, the better Office.
The actual Office.
The better Office.
There is a scene where Ricky Gervais is fighting somebody. I wonder, is it in The Office or was it did he do a white collar boxing thing?
Either way, there was a much funnier scene in the US Office.
You're a dickhead.
It's the truth. It's a far better television program.
Tony left a couple of weight divisions heavier than Sheehan, says Jonathan Anon.
True. But I've fought against adversity before in my life. I don't think against adversity again.
I don't think. I mean, there's be a make weight at 155 or something.
Jeez.
What?
I'm eating a lot of cheeseburgers
to get to 155.
I don't know.
155 is like 9 stone.
Is it? Ah, well then. I'm ready to go.
I don't know, our soundproofing isn't great in this, so you can actually hear the howls of laughter. It's 11 stone, actually. Well, I don't know, my maths wasn't so good there.
Ah, jeez, I've made myself in a long time. So we need to figure that out, I guess.
Here's the Ricky Gervais thing. Ricky Gervais, celebrity boxing, Gervais versus Bovey, full fight. That's,
That doesn't look that funny, to be honest with you, Ger.
All right, okay. It's the flailing bit. Where does Michael Scott win his fight?
He flails, yeah. He flails quite comprehensively, and it's very, very funny. But it's in a dojo, so it's far funnier.
Right. That's going to be our new promotional photo there.
Am I on the left or the right?
You could be Ricky Gervais. Sheehan is talking like a man who is 100% sure that it is not going ahead, though, says Jonathan Anon. I don't think so. I think we're going to have
How dare you, Jonathan Anon? How dare you?
I watch every Liverpool game and Ireland rugby game. More the better, says Noel Cahill. The joys of the internet, listening to the show live from Dubai. I even get a lie-in, says David Spence. Good man yourself, David. What time of the day is it in Dubai? A couple hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours ahead?
Well, let's go for 5.
Yeah, made it up there. 1:20. Good man. Still lying in bed, David Spence. Must have been a good night.
Halloween.
Must have been a good night. Ooh, Tommy, I'm not saying that. Tommy feeding us the horrible lines. Divide and conquer. Tommy's been divided and conquered. Right, that is all we have time for today. Coming up on Off the Ball on the radio tonight. It is Thursday night. It is John Giles. There'll be some European football action and plenty more coming your way from 7 o'clock on this evening show. We'll be back tomorrow morning. It's a Friday morning. Dave McIntyre's in?
Is he? No. Yeah. No. The Off the Ball Stars is tomorrow morning.
Oh, yeah.
Big. We will be giving our gongs out to...
Do you want to just briefly talk about the unfortunate history of the Off the Ball Stars, having kind of ruined something for somebody last year?
Oh, yeah, last year. So we will give out our Footballer of the Year and Hurler of the Year, as we did last year. And a tweet on the Off the Ball account kind of forgot to mention that it was the Off the Ball Stars. It was like, congratulations to Andy Moran being Footballer of the Year. And, you know, Andy Moran did win Footballer of the Year, so we spoiled it for everybody in Mayo. Genuine congratulations at Andy Moran. Oh, Andy, fair play to you, much deserved. XOXO was probably all the 400 replies to the tweet. We were very, very lucky that Andy Moran won. I can't spoil. We have decided who will win Footballer of the Year tomorrow. And I've got a sneaky suspicion it's going to be different to who actually picks up the PwC GPA GEA All-Star. So there could be a bit of controversy if we forget to actually mention it's the Off the Ball Stars tomorrow.
Yeah, not the PwC ones. So here is Andy Moran, his name Footballer of the Year at the hashtag OTB All-Stars. But you can't really tell that, like, it's just us.
The first reply, rewarding failure. Well done.
It's an individual award, you clown. Team success was already recognised with Sam. Another tick, Mulla. You keep
getting them individual awards, and we'll keep winning Sam's. Oh, Sam's with an apostrophe in there, which kind of kills the impetus.
Look at you pedant. You call him out too, on. Right, that's our lot for today.
Cowboy. I will not be coming out cowboy.
That is our lot for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 7:45. At least Owen and Adrian will be. Until then, go easy.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.